From Eureka Entertainment comes a Region A and B, which means you can play it in North America, you can play it in Europe, Blu-ray of Stephen Chow starring in King of Beggars from 1992. I am a huge Stephen Chow fan. I have been since the 90s, since I first saw, I think it was Hail the Judge on 35 millimeter at the Coolidge Corner Theater. It was a Hong Kong marathon that they were doing a lot of at that point. He was still making fresh films at that point in Hong Kong, importing them occasionally to American cities with big Chinatowns, and I would buy the DVDs as I could. I would buy VHS bootlegs off Laserdiscs that people would sell because you just couldn't see that stuff here at that time. And he was just hilarious. If you don't know Stephen Chow, most people here would know Kung Fu Hustle. That's probably his biggest film here, or Shaolin Soccer. Those were two that came out. Shaolin Soccer sort of kicked a foot in the door, and then Kung Fu Hustle came out and was huge. And then he's sort of retreated to mostly directing occasionally and writing things, unfortunately not being a leading man like he was. I think CJ7 is the last thing I recall him being in as a star several years ago. That was distributed here by Sony, I think. Anyway, we're not here to talk about all that. We're here to talk about Stephen Chow. This is 101 minutes. This is directed by Gordon Chan with Stephen Chow, Sharla, Cheung, and Ng Tat, who is his co-star. They were basically a comedy team through the majority of his films. Love seeing the Tat Man, as my friends and I would call him. Love seeing him in something. He's always great. This is a slight change of pace for Stephen Chow. It was promoted at the time as seeing him in a dramatic film, but from the get-go, he's funny in this. It is dramatic at times, but it's funny. It is presented with two options. You have your original Cantonese mono soundtrack and you have an English dub soundtrack. I listen to the Cantonese mono because I'm used to hearing those voices of the people who dubbed those people for Tatman and Stephen Chow. Those voices I equate with them, even if, as was often the case in Hong Kong cinema at the time, they aren't their actual voices. This was a Golden Harvest release. This release looks amazing, this Eureka Blu-ray. It looks great. As I said, I first saw these films in the theater, some of these films, the films of this era, let's say, in the theater, and then on VCD and DVD, and they never looked like this. I can tell you right now, in the theater, they didn't look as good as this. So this is fantastic. The basic story here is that Chow plays, it's set in the old-timey days. I should always point that out. It's an old-time, think about an old-style Kung Fu movie. It's that era. It's old-style China. And 1850s, I believe, someone in the extras clued me into. It basically spoofs wuxia films and martial arts films at times, which Chow loved those films and was pretty adept at least faking martial arts athleticism at times. He plays this very affluent and lazy son of a local police administrator, police captain, what have you, played by Ng Tat, and he is, one thing leads to another. He meets a girl he really wants to spend time with, and that's Sharla Cheung, who you would recognize if you've seen other Stephen Chow films. And he says she wants to have anything to do with him. The plot, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, and the story is far more complicated than I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to give you the basic idea of the concept here. He wants her hand in marriage. He figures out, either she tells him or he figures out, in order to win her hand, he has to win this martial arts competition, martial arts scholarship competition, and he fails miserably in that. He is believed to have been cheating in that competition. And there's a scene where he has to lift a very heavy barbell that made me laugh out loud. It's just prime Stephen Chow. And he is shamed. He and his father are punished for cheating by having to live the life of a beggar for the rest of their lives. They can't do anything to make money. They are banished to the streets forevermore. So from this state, he bands with a local beggar group, or group of revolutionaries who are trying to take out the evil, corrupt government, and who will survive and what will be left of them. That's the basic story, is Stephen Chow working to be a good martial artist, working to be a decent human being, partly out of the motivation for getting in the good graces of this female he likes, but also partly to win back the honor for himself and his father, and, not be someone who has to live in the street and eat dirt for the rest of their lives. So it's very funny. I get choked up when I talk about Stephen Chow. It's very funny, and it has some really good action sequences that sometimes border on the absurd, so you're impressed by the athleticism and the choreography, but at the same time you're laughing at how ridiculous it is. He was very good for that. Love on Delivery is another film that relies on that. It's Shaolin Soccer, and of course, obviously, Kung Fu Hustle does that too. It's a little uneven in pace. Maybe it's a little longer than it needs to be, but overall, it's got good laughs and good period costumes and sets. It's Golden Harvest. It was a studio. It's like making a movie at MGM in the 50s. You know, there was a baseline level of quality for all this stuff. And Cheung and Mentat are just great, as always. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Somehow, it's a title I'd always heard of, but it was not easy to see these things for a long time, and I'm not as much one to go looking online for things, partly because I'm getting constant review discs the last decade or so. I don't go back and try to watch somebody's complete filmography, but I'm so thrilled that these are coming out here. I know that Eureka has also put out maybe my favorite Stephen Chow movie, which is From Beijing with Love, which was his James Bond spoof, which to me is one of the best Bond spoofs. And that's a UK only release. I know Shout Factory has released a box set of Stephen Chow stuff. So I think it's one of those things where the rights are all kind of all over the place. And in the UK, you can get a ton of his stuff. And here it's still kind of coming out in dribs and drabs and from different companies. But hopefully Eureka will be able to release more of their editions here because they do an excellent job. Special features. I was going to say limited to, containing but not limited to, but this is all the special features. It is a commentary by Frank Zheng, who I've mentioned a million times doing these. He is great. He was the one of the people who ran Tai-Seng Video in the 90s, which brought a lot of Hong Kong movies to U.S. shores, mostly for the Chinese market, but you could find him in Tower Records too. And he knows the deal. Frank's from Hong Kong. He knows all the people in the films, or at least he knows who they are and a lot about them. So you watch a movie like this and he's telling you about Chinese history. He's telling you about the in-jokes that people who, like me, are not going to get, or English speakers or Americans or whatever. He talks about what was going on in film at that time, everybody in front of him, behind the camera. His commentaries are excellent, so that was a fun listen. That's how I knew what year this film was set in. Kung Fu Scholar, an interview with director Gordon Chan. That's a half hour with the director of this film. It talks about his career overall, which is very cool. It's a name I knew, but I didn't know much about him. He also did Jackie Chan's Thunderbolt. And then you get So Chan and Stephen Chow, King of Beggars and Its Star. It's a video essay by Gary Bettinson. That's very good. That's 18 minutes. And then you get the original trailer that's 3 minutes, and it looks just as good as the film itself. As far as the package, you get nice new artwork there on the cover, slipcase, I should say. We slip it out, and it slips to reveal original poster art, original promotional art for the film. Crack it open, and we get a booklet and the disc under the reversible cover, but the reversible cover basically is just a menu in terms of what you would placemat. Menu, it's been a long day. The booklet has a lot of stills from the film. Stephen Chow with long hair is what you're getting in this film. And it has one singular sensation, which is an essay by Andy Wallace called Gordon Chan, a Hong Kong metteur en scene. That's Gordon Chan, the director of this film. It's a very interesting article, and what I love about stuff like this is that it does not duplicate the information that you've already received very little of the information is duplicated from what you get in that commentary and that half-hour Gordon Chan interview and that 20-minute video essay. It's nice when I have received over the years discs or bought discs that have a lot of extras, and by the time you get to the end of it, you're like, I've heard these stories 6 times. I don't need to hear them again. This doesn't do that. A lot of companies, boutique labels like Eureka, are really good about making sure there isn't a lot of repetition in the content and the extras, which is great. I know we learn through repetition, but it can kind of feel like you're wasting your time when you're hearing the same thing over and over again. So, highly recommend this if you're a Stephen Chow fan. I wouldn't say this is one of his best movies, but this is a good Stephen Chow movie. Some of his movies, some of the stuff early on that he did and some of the stuff that were later period were a little bit weaker and not really, especially the early stuff isn't really what you come to know him for. So this is really kind of in that sweet spot of when he was really cranking out the really solid flicks. This is King of Beggars.